Good evening all, and welcome. For all of you home alone tonight, I hope you don't get spooked too badly. Surely, you are truly alone. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. My girlfriend and I had been living in our new apartment approximately 3 to 4 months at the time of this story. For clarification and background, we live in a basement level unit. The one and only entrance is inside the building and down the stairs. However, there's 4 windows facing nothing but a row of shrubbery and tree line. It was roughly 9 to 10 p.m. and she was at work for the evening. I had the place to myself, lights on and TV blasting. I was sitting in the living room, planning on eating trashy and binge-watching the remaining episodes of Broad City. Not long into it, however, I heard a scraping sound from the bathroom. My first thought? A mouse, which was the last thing we needed. So I get up and make my way through the hallway as quietly as I can to catch a glimpse of it. The closer I got, the more I realized the scratching wasn't coming from the bathroom, but rather the window of the master bedroom. My next guess was it was simply kids playing outside, as they tend to, or the bunny I had seen bouncing out there that morning. Even more likely, someone taking a dog out to pee. I paused, tried to hone my hearing, and only then noticed it wasn't a sound echoing from outside, but rather scratching on the window itself. I started entering my bedroom when I noticed the sound stopped and moved to the adjacent window in the room next to it. A smaller bedroom that gave us the creeps as it is. We never used it, and there was no light source. It simply sits dark and empty aside from a few boxes of my clothing. Now, thinking back, it was probably a bad idea. I'm a small girl, maybe 5'2", 90 pounds and soaking wet. But I do have a bit of a spirit and tad bad temper. I had hoped, upon being discovered, that whoever it was, obviously to me, now that was more of a someone and not a thing, would run off. I had caught them red-handed. So I steeled myself and yelled out, "I hear you. What do you want?" The scratching stopped instantly. I waited. After what felt like an eternity, I assumed the coast was clear. I made my way to the windowsill and slowly cracked open the blinds. I don't know why I did. Because there he was crouched, peering into me with the widest and wildest eyes I've ever seen on a person, most certainly strung out on something. He told me to let him in. As shocked as I was, I almost laughed at the audacity, as if I was just going to swing open the window and let him waltz in. Using the remaining courage I had mustered, I tell him so not gently, "Get the hell away from my house." He again told me to let him in, to which I informed him that I was calling the police, and hurriedly proceeded to do just that. I even turned the phone to face him for added effect, hoping this would scare or intimidating him. Anything to get this man to leave. Unfortunately, it had the exact opposite effect. He was seething, raging, and practically foaming at the mouth. He drew back and punched the window hard, repeatedly slamming his fists and palms against the glass. The window started cracking, blood flinging up like a gore-filmed movie effect. I was out of there fast, heart racing, slamming the door shut behind me, so tempted to run out the front door, but incredibly scared that he would just come around to the front of the building. It would take no time at all for him to do so. Torn and trapped, I picked up the nearest blunt object and placed it between myself and in between the 2 doors. I figured whichever one moved first, I'd go out the other. I still had the phone to my ear, urging the 911 operator to get someone here fast. In my panicked state, I also feared for my girlfriend, who would usually be coming home soon. I messaged her, warning her about what was going on. Eventually, sirens and a pounding came to the front door. The police arrived. I explained what had happened, and they searched the apartment and area near the window, coming back with a set of keys that he had possibly dropped, but no sign of him, other than the broken window. They took a sample from the blood splatter that was left on the glass. My girlfriend came home after, having left work early and calling the police herself. I'm grateful she did. Maintenance had been notified, and they threw up temporary boarding until it could be repaired. They never actually found the guy. Or if they did, I didn't receive any updates about it. Definitely didn't get any sleep that night though. This summer, I went with a friend, both of us are females aged 21, to my grandparents' house in Spain. She had just finished college, so was looking for a summer job there, and I had overdue work for college, which I had to do over the summer. In the following weeks, she couldn't get a job, so she decided to go back home. But my parents were going to be flying over in 2 weeks' time, and my siblings and cousins would be following down a few weeks after. I decided to stay on and wait for them, and not cut my own holiday short. I was getting used to being a complete hermit, as I didn't know anyone there and couldn't speak the primary language. The only human contact I had was when I went down to the local supermarket. I went down to pick up my groceries one day, and after 10 days into a fortnight of loneliness, as I'm walking down an aisle, this guy walks by and says, "Hola." Now, I thought he must be talking to someone else, or I misheard him, but I noticed him glancing over at me every now and then. When I had picked up all my groceries, I went to the register to pay, and who was in front of me but the same man, who turned around and gestured for me to go ahead of him. I smiled, thanked him, and went ahead. Every time I glanced back at him, his eyes were focused on me, unmoving, which kept making me look awkwardly away. After finishing the transaction, I left and went to make the 4-minute walk back home. Feeling a bit creeped out, lo and behold, as I'm walking past the neighbor's house, this car stops beside me. The window goes down, and there's the guy again, who starts speaking to me in Spanish and gesturing for me to get into his car. As I don't speak Spanish, I assume he was offering me a lift home, and I try and communicate to him that I'm nearly done home, but he keeps going on and on in fast-paced Spanish, even though I clearly haven't got a clue what he's saying. After a few more, "No gracias, no gracias," he finally drives off, and I wait to resume walking, as I don't want this random guy to know exactly which house I live in. Now I have to explain that the house I live in has a 6-foot wall along the whole perimeter, broken up by a front door to the front garden, and a sliding door for the car, to come in and out of the road. Around the house, there are about 8 motion sensor lights, and there were bars on all the windows and patio doors. The following night at 3 a.m., I get woken up to the motion sensor lights going off outside my front door, which was the bedroom I was facing. Now, this wasn't abnormal. It could have been any number of bugs, lizards, cats, but what quickly followed was the motion sensor light outside my room going on, and I could hear footsteps. Definitely not that of an animal. I was frozen there in panic, listening for any more noises, as the light turned off outside my room. I lay there, hearing only my heart drumming in my head, until the same thing happened again about a minute later. reconfirming that it actually was someone's footsteps outside. After that, I lay awake for the rest of the night in total silence, not moving. But I didn't hear anyone else. Once it became light enough outside, I got out of bed and waited until it wasn't an ungodly time to call my parents back home, who in turn contacted some friends of my grandparents in Spain, and I stayed with them for the final 3 nights before my grandparents flew over again. I'm thankful that there were bars on nearly every opening in the house, but I don't think I'll ever be able to stay home alone there again. This happened when I was 9 or 10. My parents rarely left me home alone, but when they do, it's mostly because they've got adult stuff, like going on for a relative's funeral ceremony, visiting a hospital, or something like that they don't want to bring me to, because they're scared that I will act awkwardly, and they're right. So it was the case when they let me on my own in that gloomy evening that scarred me for life. They told me that they'll be back for dinner, but in case, my mum prepared some spaghetti and told me to eat it and go to bed if they weren't coming after 8:30 p.m. They had the door keys and begged me to not lock it from the inside so that they can unlock the door without my help. As soon as they left at around 6:30, I began to do my homework, to get rid of them so that I could play video games for 2 hours straight. I was really into my game and I barely checked the time, but when I did, it was already 8 p.m, and that's when my nightmares started. So I paused the game and reheat my spaghetti in the microwave when I heard the interphone. I live in an apartment on the 5th floor, and in order to unlock the main door on the ground floor, we had to use that interphone. You could unlock the main door with the keys, but my dad told me they'll still call me with the interphone to make sure I was sleeping or not. I answered the call, presuming it was my parents. I say hello, but no answer. Then I continue with, "Okay, it's unlocked now." Still no answer. It felt strange to me, because they will always say something before coming in, but I thought they were really just in a hurry to see me. How naive was I? Things got worse. After waiting for 15 minutes, I started to realize that it wasn't my parents at the interphone, because I was living on the 5th floor, and it certainly doesn't take 15 minutes to get the elevator, or even to climb up the stairs. So I just unlocked some random stranger. But I felt like, no big deal, because no way in hell is that stranger gonna guess in which floor I was living. You saw that coming, huh? Well, I didn't. Someone started ringing the doorbell 20 minutes after I answered the interphone. I knew it wasn't my parents, because not only was the person ringing the doorbell in the most horrendous way possible, but he was also knocking on the door. Things that my parents wouldn't do, because they have the freaking key. I was sweating, and I started to switch off all the lights, and I took a kitchen knife with me, even though I have no idea who this person is, as I was too scared to look into the keyhole. I knew that person wasn't welcome in my home. Then the guy says, "I know there's someone here. No need to be scared. I'm the hallway cleaner. I just want some water, I'm thirsty." At that point, I was about to call my parents so they could come and beat him, but the phone was in my room, and if I move, I'll make a noise. Stupid wooden freaking creaking floors. So I stayed next to the main door in the dark, sweating, kitchen knife in hand. He was still trying to convince me to open the door with his same, "I'm exhausted, I'm thirsty" strategy. But I knew he was lying. 1. Why ask for water when there's a fountain on the ground floor? And 2, I was pretty sure that he was the person at the interphone. That's why he said, I know there's someone here, because I freaking answered him at the interphone. But how the hell did he find out which floor I was living on? That's still a mystery. Was he spying on me? Did he know where my parents lived? Did he kill them and take the keys? Little me was getting paranoid, and tears began falling down my cheeks. But after what seemed like an eternity, he finally left his last words, and they're still fresh in my memory. "You're not a very polite little girl," and his footsteps faded away from the door. Even if he was gone for good, I sat down next to the door and cried. I was 9 to 10 at the time, and I managed to pull myself together, wipe off my tears, and waited for my parents. When they arrived, I hugged them, and they kind of scolded me for not being asleep yet, so I didn't tell them what happened. I was scared they'd scold me more and forbid me from going to my pajama parties. I was even more stupid at that age. The whole week after, I kept an eye on the cleaning staff in the building, and yet I've never met a male hallway cleaner. P.S. I told my family about this little incident during Christmas dinner. Didn't mention all the details, but they were very surprised that I hadn't said anything to them after all these years. We even had a nervous laughter after I said that I took the kitchen knife to defend myself. I never thought that I could laugh at that incident before. As for the mystery, it still remains a mystery. But we all discussed about this case, and the more plausible scenario is that the intruder is actually one of our neighbours, because there was no other way to find in which floor and door I was in. My parents are very friendly, so they usually talk a lot with the neighbours. I even remember that my dad used to bring me with him while visiting his neighbours' friends, because they were around the same age and had the same kids to play with. So the fact that they were out that evening probably hit the ears of the neighbours. Anyway, we got a lot of fun resolving that mystery, and I feel much more relieved now. The heavy dark secret that I was holding is finally gone. I was 17 and lived with my parents in a very remote location in a small town in the middle of a forest. There were no neighbours, just forest. At some point in September, these flashlights start appearing, and they are pointing at our windows. Sometimes it was 2, but mostly just one of them. We never bothered the police or anyone with it, because we thought it was just some kids or some guy who has nothing else to do. And they never really touched anything, just flashed our windows and knocked on them. It was definitely creepy, but after a few weeks of going outside and even waiting for them to appear, they were never there. We got so used to it. They weren't like regular. Sometimes they were for a couple of days or weeks between. This encounter happened just a few days after Christmas. My parents were visiting relatives, and I was doing whatever teenage boys do when they have the house to themselves and no friends. At like 11 p.m, I decided to go shower. Now our shower was in a separate building, so I had to walk across the yard to get into the shower. Nothing out of the ordinary happens there, but as I'm walking across the yard, just with a towel on me, I hear a man behind me say, "You know, I can catch you if you run." At that point I wanted to cry for mother, but I kept walking like I hadn't even noticed the guy. The door was unlocked since I was too lazy to carry keys, and I just slammed the door behind me and lock it. Grab a knife from the lobby, as our house was littered with them since they are always needed and missing, and go through the house checking every single possible hiding spot. Luckily, there's no one there. After that incident, there were no more flashing lights or anything creepy. I didn't call the police, but I informed them, and I never got to know why he was just standing there creeping me out. He clearly wasn't there for anything violent. Or was he? I'm a 6'7" tall guy, and I'm definitely not the first choice as a victim, but I did have very long hair, so maybe he thought I was a girl or something. Whatever the case, I hope to never meet again. My mother's best friend in another state surprised her by saying she would personally pay for a plane ticket to come out and see her as a special birthday treat. After getting an okay from the doctor, saying that she was good enough to travel, my mum packed her bags. When you're in your late 50s and never see your friends, you jump at the chance to see them. So for 2 weeks, my mum was going to be in another state, visiting a friend, allowing me to have the house to myself for the entire time. Unlike some girls, I did not throw parties or have friends over. Really, I just went to work, came home after, and relaxed. I had been staying by myself for years. When I did live on a college campus, my roommate almost never slept in our room. And before that, as a teenager, I was often home alone overnight for many reasons. Also, I am no delicate wallflower. I'm not so petite, but I'm not overweight. Honestly, I'm an average build, but I could probably knock down someone if I needed to. So after my mum had left for the 2 weeks, life went on as normal. For 3 days I continued as normal, but by the end of the first week alone, I had really only left my house to go to work or to go to the grocery store. But at the beginning of the second week is when I felt uneasy. I'm not easily frightened, so this unease was foreign to me. While I had not invited people over, I did go to a friend's house. She and I just wanted to hang out, binge on junk food and watch horror movies, and gossip about lame bullshit as we were still teenagers. I went home around midnight, so it was very dark when I pulled into my driveway. I should mention that my house is practically in the middle of nowhere, and my nearest neighbour is at least a mile away. And to make matters worse, we have an outdoor light that automatically kicks on when it's dark outside, like a city streetlight actually. Well, ever since Mom went on her trip, the light began to flicker, and when I look outside in the night, I would sometimes see pitch black. Anyway, midnight, and it was my dumbass that ignored the light outside being very flickery. It was practically off, only giving me faint glimmers of light to show me the door. I just used the flashlight on my phone, turning off the flashlight when I was on my porch, so I stood in darkness. No porch light or anything were on. When I stepped onto my porch to unlock the door, I heard the cat meowing. Mum and I are allergic to cats, so we can't keep one inside of the house. Why we don't just bite the bullet and take an allergy pill? I don't know. But the cat was perched in the porch swing as usual, as I could tell by her meow's direction. She also hissed at me, or something in the dark. Damn pole light, why didn't it work? I passed my cat's hissing off as her being a drama queen, and head inside. Now this is where I stop stalling and say what happened. By coincidence, one of the movies my friends and I were watching was called Psycho. You know, crazy dude with a mummy complex in a motel killing people, with the infamous shower scene. And who can forget Norman Bates' stare at the end of the film? His eyes. His evil eyes. Just after walking through my front door, I felt weird, like I had done something stupid. Chills ran down my arm and through the back of my neck without explanation. I swore that just after I closed my front door and locked it, I heard a crunch. A crunch like a person eating cereal. I shrugged it off and proceeded to get my ass into bed, and that was it. The next night I got home late again, this time from work. I had been given the task of locking up the gas station before coming home. It was around midnight again, and I came home this time to complete darkness. Only the car's headlights shined my way. Hastily, in the black of night before my lights automatically kicked off, I ran into my door and let myself in the house. There was the sound again. My cat hissed, following by crunching. Let me remind you, and think of this. It's pitch black. Outside of my field of light, I see nothing, and I'm going off what I assume there is. That night, after going to bed, I wake up to the sound of something falling out on the porch. The sound was so loud it penetrated the walls of my house. I live in a one-story home, so the sound had not to travel far. My bedroom is in the middle of the house, like the exact center. I was startled by the sound. It was 2 a.m. At first I thought it was the cat playing outside. She's weird. Curious, I got up to investigate. There I was, wearing random clothes to sleep, my hair in a ponytail, my phone at 50% charge, at my most vulnerable in a half-asleep daze. I peer around the corner of the hallway and look out our doorway. Our front door is one of those doors with a big window on it, so you could see outside pretty darned easily. The light outside was working again, but I wish it hadn't. I reference Norman Bates as a sign of, what is the word? Irony, given I had seen Psycho recently. Now illuminated by the outdoor light, standing on my front porch, holding my cat, was a man. He was tall, skinny, surprisingly well dressed, and holding my freaking cat in one arm. In the other, struck my curiosity more. He held a spoon. My cat looked like she wanted nothing to do with him, but he was so content holding her in one arm and a spoon in the other. I stand frozen behind the wall, my eyes barely seeing him, as I swear I start to zone out. This is what fear feels like. It isn't fun. We have an automatic cat feeder on our front porch. Simple thing. You fill the back with food, and at certain times it dispenses just enough for the kitty to eat at scheduled meal times. This man had opened up the compartment of the feeder and dipped his spoon inside like it was a bowl of cornflakes. He proceeded to eat the cat food slowly, and I could see my cat fidgeting with him. I could even hear him hissing, like she had before. Wait! More on that in a moment. He's not doing anything, mind you, just holding my cat at 2 a.m, eating the cat food, and not moving a single muscle. But I was frozen in fear, because a stranger doing anything on my property this late, when I or anyone is alone, is going to freak someone out. I prayed to God that he would just eat his snacks and leave. But no. He closed the compartment after getting a big spoonful of cat chow and sat on the porch swing where my cat liked to sleep. He then let her go free. My cat just wandered around the porch, immediately going to the opposite side. The man just sat there. In true Norman Bates fashion, he twisted his face into a satisfactory grin, similar to Norman's face, the one he makes at the end of the film, claiming he would never hurt a fly. Yeah, if you've seen that scene, you know what I mean. Chilling. It was at this moment I sneezed. I sneezed pretty loud too. So loud that I stand there behind the corner, barely poking out my head, and the man hears me. He turns his still grinning face to me. Oh shit. He can see me. He can see me, and he knows where I'm standing right now. Not even 20 feet away. His facial expression didn't change. He just grinned and grinned and grinned and licked his lips as if he was so satisfied with his meal. Sicko freak. I immediately began to cry. I was scared of this creep, and he hadn't even appeared to pose a threat. I got every bad feeling from him. I knew the door was locked when I started to pick my phone up to call the police. But he saw the phone, came up and shook his head. No. Then he spoke. Do not do that, was all he said. At that point I started sobbing, forgetting to breathe and practically dry heaving. I may have overreacted, but I was petrified. Other reactions be damned. Nobody can tell you you shouldn't feel scared when you're truly scared. the man just stood up, still grinning, waved goodbye, and walked off my porch. By sheer coincidence, the light outside flickered just as he was out of sight. After sobbing from more fright, I collected myself enough to call the police, and my mother, and my friends, my cousin, and everyone I knew right then and there. I balled up on the floor, in tears. For all I knew, I was only helping people know I was going to die, and they should come ASAP to get the killer. But instead of finding me dead, the police arrived to a scared girl in her hallway, panicking, sobbing, and horrified. The police did not believe my story. They did not find him, no matter how many lights they used, or if the outside light came on for more than a few minutes. They could not find him. Just some psycho with a thing for cat food. Maybe it's funny, but to me it's not. I felt terrified from this man. I asked my friends and one of my cousins to come and stay with me the day after. Actually, the very same night. My friend who I'd visited the day prior came over. I called work and asked for the remainder of the week off. Nobody left me home alone until Mum returned. Normally I care for her, but when she returned, she was taking care for me, and I cried for days. Maybe nothing really happened, but I was scared shitless. We brought the cat inside, so no more midnight snacks for the freak show. Psycho wannabe. Let's never meet again. This happened 4 years ago. I had just graduated from high school and was a month and a half into summer break. Needing money for college, I began working full-time for the school district I had just graduated from. Due to a music festival I wanted to attend, as well as monetary concerns, I did not go with my family to North Carolina, which was fine by me. What 18-year-old doesn't want a house to themselves for a week? Furthermore, my parents' house is out in the country, so I have little to no fear about my neighbours complaining about parties or being bothered in any way whatsoever. But I was wrong. I often take the back roads from my friend's house, but on that night, I decided I wanted some McDonald's. So I took the main drag and came home on a different route. This way takes you past the mechanic shop, and I noticed a car's lights turning on, or should I say, light, for this car had only one headlight working. I remember thinking that it was strange that this car all of a sudden turned its lights on as I was passing, and began to become even more concerned when it pulled out behind me. But I tend to be paranoid by nature. Nothing serious, but I always question if the person behind me is following me, and whether they mean to harm me. So I brushed it off as an unfortunate coincidence. But as I neared my street, and the car was still tailing me, I started to become freaked out. I looked at my gas tank, and my heart sunk, as I saw I was on empty. Either I pulled onto my street and go home, or I risk driving around some and seeing if this dude follows. Yet that option held the risk of my car running out of gas and leaving me stranded on the road, and I figured I'd rather take my chances on my own soil than on the side of some dark, lonely country backroad. So I turned onto my street, only to have my heart sink when the one headlamped car makes the turn right behind me. At this point I know I'm screwed. With nothing left to do, I begin pulling up my driveway. It's a hill about 100 yards long, and to my utter horror, they begin to follow me up. Looking back, I should have called the cops, but there's no lost love between law enforcement and myself, and at the time I was too caught up to even consider calling them. If my family would have been home, this would have never happened. I would have called my dad, and he would have grabbed his gun, but he, along with the rest of my family, were gone, 12 hours away and at the beach. So when they began to drive up my driveway after me, I stopped and put my car in reverse. They responded by reversing too, and yet they stopped at the bottom, effectively blocking my driveway. At this point, I pulled forward again, only to have the same jig and dance happen. They followed, I reversed, they reversed, and sat on the end, blocking my escape. I quickly pulled up and turned my car around to come at them head on. By this time they were halfway up my driveway, the furthest they had ever come. Looking back, I was terrified, alone, and angry. Who did this person think they were, with my brights on and shining right back into their face? I opened my car door, got out, pulled out my pocket knife, and grasped it into my left hand while I grabbed my hammer into my right. I used to keep one between my seat and door. In some weird, desperate mindset, I had made a split-second decision to grab the hammer from the hand with the handle sticking out. My hope was that it would be mistaken as a gun. I began yelling and pointing my hammer/gun at the car while screaming at them to get the hell out. And what do you want? All the time I held my hammer as a gun and prayed that they would fall for it. Whether they did or not, I cannot say. Part of me believes they thought it was a gun due to my brights being held while making my whole front side a shadow. Yet they could have just not wanted a fight. Perhaps they thought I was a girl, or was timid, and wouldn't reset so aggressively and violently. Who knows, but it worked. They slowly backed out of my driveway and crept around the cul-de-sac. As they were leaving my street, I ran after them, hiding behind my neighbor's house. And at every driveway, the car would slow down to near stop, as if scoping out the houses. Thankfully, they didn't pull into any driveways, and they turned off my street altogether. After I was safely in my house, I ate McDonald's by the front window with all my lights turned off, waiting to see if the creeps would come back. Thankfully, they did not. But that night, I locked every door in the house, which I have always done anyway, and slept with a hammer, machete, and baseball bat next to me, and pocket knife under the pillow. Complete overkill, I know, but I was terrified. Now I know where my dad keeps his guns, so if it ever happens again, I'll be better prepared. This happened about 2 months ago, when my parents went away for the weekend, leaving me and my pets to look after the house. Usually I'm very nervous to be home alone overnights, because I'm a weak 18-year-old girl who happens to have a few enemies in town. There are teenagers who have assaulted and threatened me, and things like that. So of course, when I'm alone, I get paranoid. My parents decided to leave on Thursday night, which usually went uneventfully. So did Friday night. Finally, Saturday night rolls around, and I'm playing some games with my friends. It's 2 a.m, and my dog is asleep behind me. All the doors are locked, lights are off, and I'm feeling good. Until I hear something outside. It starts quiet, but gradually gets louder and louder. Eventually I realize that there's someone outside my house, yelling. Usually I wouldn't care. It's Saturday night, and people walk down my road all the time when they're drunk. Except perhaps 5 minutes past this time, and this person has gone nowhere. I sneak up to my window, and lift the blind up just enough to peek out the window. And there he is, a fully grown man who I recognize, and later found out is someone my family know, looking directly at my window with the most terrifying angry look on his face. He stood in the doorway, in my driveway facing the house, yelling for 10 minutes. I'm a defenseless girl, and he's getting close to my house and getting increasingly more angry. I should have phoned the police, but I didn't know what to do. I rang my sister, and with my heart pounding and hands shaking, I told her what was going on. Luckily for me, she was calm about it, and asked me to shut the blind and listen to see if he would leave. I couldn't make out the words, but he kept going on for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I couldn't hear him. but I heard something smash. I was still on the phone, and I told my sister that I swear I heard something smash, and I was scared it was a window or something. My dog is deaf, by the way, so he was unaware of this whole thing. My sister tells me to go downstairs and check, so I turn on my flashlight on my phone and I slowly make my way downstairs. I'm basically ready to see this dude in my house and get killed or worse. But I check the windows and they're all fine. The doors are all locked and I don't see him in the peephole. My sister then tells me she can hear him around the house. She has 2 disabled kids, so I was literally shitting myself thinking he was going to try and break in. I asked her if I should call the police, but then she heard him leave, and we didn't hear him for all the rest of the night. I found out the next day that there was a bottle smashed outside, and that's what the noise was. Even if this might have seemed like a harmless drunk, me being home alone that night makes this terrifying. And if I hadn't have closed my blinds and basically hidden until he left, I don't know what he could have been capable of. I haven't told my parents who we think he was, because he lives close, and I know for a fact my parents would kill him. Even so, whenever it's late at night, and I hear a drunk man's voice outside my house, I always fear the worst. Years ago, when I was in grade school, now I'm 22, my parents one Monday morning finally felt confident in allowing me to come home from school by myself and stay home without a babysitter until they arrived as well. That morning, my father gave me the house key, showed me the emergency numbers in the yellow book, and gave me instructions on what to do if stupid things happened, like the house catching on fire. After school that day, I came home, put the key in the door, and walked into my open house. I felt free, and I felt privileged that I was finally a big boy, and that I could now be home on my own. Needless to say, I kind of got caught up in the moment, and ate tons of ice cream while watching Terminator on VHS, since my parents would never let me watch anything over PG-13. Around 5 that day, I heard the doorbell ring. My dad told me to never answer the door by myself, even if they were home. I walked to our family room, where I could get a good view of who was there. Maybe my dad was getting a package or something. He did always enjoy ordering things online. And I saw a middle-aged man standing in a dark black jacket that I've never seen before. He rang the doorbell again, and I expected him to leave after receiving no answer. After a 3rd ring, I saw him walk down the steps and assumed he was leaving. I went back to watching Terminator when I noticed something outside my kitchen window. The man was walking in our backyard for some odd reason. I felt scared for my life, since some stranger was on our property. I ran under the kitchen table and grabbed the cordless phone from the counter and proceeded to call my dad's work number. He answered, and I exclaimed how some strange man was in the backyard and was now proceeding to try and open our sliding door. My dad told me to stay where I was and call the neighbors. He would call 911. I told my dad I loved him, and he said that he would call me immediately after he dialed 911. Before I could call my neighbors, the man was able to somehow open our family room window. I feared for my life and ran to the bathroom and locked the door and called our neighbors. After about 30 seconds, I heard my neighbor running through our house, shouting my name to see if I was okay. She said how she saw no one in the house, and we stayed in the bathroom until the police arrived. The police conducted their investigation and told us they found some fingerprints that matched a recently released criminal who was previously put in jail for breaking into homes. After that day, my parents did not leave me without a babysitter until I went to high school. Every week, I wonder what happened. Did he run when he saw someone was in the house? Did my neighbor scare him away if he heard her yelling? Needless to say, after that day, and even after I was allowed to stay home without a babysitter, I never stayed home alone. I was either at a friend's house or an after-school program until my parents came to pick me up. I still feel unsafe home alone. This happened back when I was in 5th grade. I had just realised I had forgotten to make cookies for my school's bake sale, and it was the night before. My mum was naturally irked that I'd forgotten, but, as mums do, she helped me make some snickerdoodles. So we get to baking, and everything went a-okay until we didn't have enough eggs or sugar. Of course, my mum is not happy. It's 8 p.m, and she reluctantly grabbed her keys and hopped into the car. My sister was already in bed, and my mum said she could trust me to be home alone for the first time. Not even 10 minutes after she left, I heard a tapping on our front porch. This was the creepiest, slowest tap you could ever imagine. I thought it was a bird or at worst a raccoon, but it was so methodical. This went on for 5 minutes. I curled up in the fetal position and rocked back and forth while waiting for it to stop. I eventually gathered the courage to take a peek outside the window. When I raised the blinds, I saw a man's face illuminated by my porch light. As soon as I opened the blinds, his eyes shot straight to the window, staring right at me. He smiled. I ran into my sister's room, locked the door and turned on the light. She woke up and started crying. To get her to stop, I read her the story. All the while, I had the tapping coming from our front door. When my mum pulled up, the tapping stopped. I went to my aunt and uncle's house on a family vacation 10 years ago. We drove from South Texas to some small town in Missouri. I can't remember the name. We arrived at 1 a.m. The family consisted of myself, 2 younger sisters, mother and father. Most of the family was hungry from the long drive and wanted to see if a McDonald's was open. I was so tired from the long car ride and wanted to stay at the house. Mum said one of my sisters would be staying as well. I settled down into the living room watching TV, slightly dozing off, and I can remember hearing the pitter-patter down the hallway, and I assumed it was my sister just running around. She'd been eating sugary snacks the whole way up, and I get a call from my mum asking what I wanted to eat, and in the background, I can hear both my sisters arguing. I hear a giggle somewhere behind me, stand up, look around, and there's nothing. I asked my mum if my sister ended up going with them, which she confirmed. I stood in the corner of the room until she got back. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I put out a little 5-minute poll just to see if anyone wanted alien stories. It was more of a joke than anything, but I do plan on doing it in future, so yeah. But guys, alien stories would be great. I know you'll like them, so please tune in when I do them. I'll probably make it extra long to compensate. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Maybe I'll mix up some other stuff in there too, just to make it even more appealing. Don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you're new, and press the bell icon for more stories every night. If you want to send me a story, send it to my Reddit or my email found in the description. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.